Hello.
Well, hello.
What's up, buddy?
Salutations. I was going to be late on purpose. I figured we'll start the new year with a lateness. And I was like, no, no, no.
Why not?
What's funny is, ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, children of all ages, Justin Smith just sent me a picture of his new podcasting setup. And it's gorgeous. It's got monitors and
It's freaking sweet.
it's sweet. Meanwhile, I have this beautiful boom arm that you're seeing on the screen right now, and it is plastic viced onto a 2x4, which is being weighted down with a aluminum, or actually it's probably steel. It's a steel hatchet and another metal weight. Because if I barely touch it, it's gonna fall over.
I got the TV. I got the mouse now, so I can change my music while I'm here. I can watch The
Nice.
Office.
Nice.
I got an arm coming, so this TV will be attached to the desk, but come up and out some.
Look at you coming up in the big world.
Yeah, man. I got another camera. I've had another camera that Jake will use for THPs now, so that we're not trying to fit both of us in frame. Yeah, so starting off 2022 with a bang with episode 103 of Snakes and Stogies, brought to you by Puget Sound Pythons.
Right there in the corner, kids, with their schmexy new logo.
Yes.
I like the old logo. I mean, it was a good logo, but I feel like this one is way more encompassing of the vibe that is the Gendra.
The color, I don't feel like it's actually a fact that, you stick to a certain color scheme with the brand, stick with a logo, update the logo and stuff, but you keep those two core components, I think, and that really over time it builds itself. People like the background for the PCE logo, on the Facebook and stuff, is that gradient of the yellow to teal.
Right.
And I haven't changed that since day one, and I think that plays a part in brand recognition. I don't know. It's, I guess it depends on who you ask, but I think if you keep the color theme and you keep things, fonts and things similar over time, with subtle adjustments, it does its job.
I couldn't agree more.
But yeah, it's a new year.
Crazy, right?
Freaking pumped. I guess. I mean, should we mention sort of changes, sort of what to expect?
Yeah, I mean, for those of you who are unaware, the Herbiculture magazine is taking a indefinite hiatus as of right now. The website will still be up and running, and it's going to have more THN stuff on it. And in the near future, certain individuals such as myself and Justin and maybe a few others, we're going to keep adding, articles that we write if people want to read them. And
I've got plans on that front.
Yeah. So unfortunately, the magazine will not be around anymore for the time being, but Justin and I are going to put some more effort into the network itself. And there's going to be some more consistency in terms of the side burner shows, i.e. ConjureCast and Corn Stars. So why don't you want to take it away from there?
Yeah. So, I mean, it's, the magazine, we made an official announcement that sort of explained what was going on, why it is pretty much where it's at. Thankfully, advertisers, Reptiles Express, Toad Ranch, Black Box, everyone was very cool about the whole thing, and it wasn't nearly as rough of a sort of a transition as I thought it would be. So yeah, definitely plan to put more into the network, YouTube. Not really necessarily having new shows or anything like that come into the fray, but just doing more here, putting out the other shows more consistently that have been inconsistent, like Phil said. ConjureCast in particular, corn stars. I feel like we've been fairly consistent with that. I mean, we're only 3 episodes deep, but it is what it is. And then, I mean, Venom Exchange. So the first episode of that dropped yesterday. I listened to it as soon as you posted the link, and it was freaking awesome. Me and my dad listened to it while we were building a mouse rack. So
awesome, man. I'm glad you guys loved it.
Great.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for those of you who are using Apple Podcast and Google Play. Apple and Google basically said, whoa, we have no idea who you are.
Yep.
So hopefully in the next 24 to 48 hours, they'll be on there, but it's already on Spotify and it's already on SoundCloud for those of you who actually have a SoundCloud subscription and want to follow it there. And we got at least 3 more episodes done, and we're going to release them as time goes on. And we're going to have the list of people we're having is just, it's going to be awesome. I don't want to give away any spoilers or anything, but it's people that you want to hear from, or you didn't even know existed and you want to. So
what are you smoking upon this eve?
This evening, I am smoking a Gurkha Royal Challenge, which I had not heard about before.
Oh, man, I haven't had one of those in years.
Yeah.
I forgot those existed.
I'll tell you, it was given to me by a friend from work, and it's a phenomenal smoke. I mean, from the 5 puffs I've taken so far, it almost has, upon the initial drag, it has like a crystallized, almost like the crackling that you'd get from a flavored cigar, but it's definitely not flavored.
Mm-hmm.
I'm assuming it's some kind of Connecticut.
Yeah, I think so. They had a Connecticut and a Maduro.
Well, obviously this is definitely not the Maduro, but it's really nice so far. Like real quick, it took a minute for me to toast it. I don't know if you guys could see. I didn't know if that was my lighter being funny or if it was the tobacco. When I took it out, it was in cellophane in an aluminum tube, and the cellophane felt real good. But when I touched the actual tobacco, it kind of felt a little dry, a little stale. So we'll see how she rolls. But what are you partaking in this evening?
I got this on-air sign for Christmas, and it's freaking sweet. But when you light it up, you can't see it.
Oh, that looks so good, man!
Just my little desk is accruing a bunch of bullshit, more or less. But so I got some Davidoffs for my birthday, and I got another humidor for my birthday. So I made that one my aging box. So now I have sort of my box with my everyday smokes. Now I've got a box of stuff that I'm sitting on. And I pulled this Davidoff out because I was like, first 6 Stogies of the year, I ain't gonna just smoke anything, So
yeah,
I've had a few Davidoffs, so Davidoffs to me, I've always heard, they're overrated, they're expensive, they're good cigars, but are they really worth the $20 price tag? Whatever. This is the Nicaragua box pressed, so
nice.
I'm gonna give it a shot. The draw is extremely light, like there's no resistance whatsoever so far, and we'll see. I'm gonna take my time with it. So
excellent.
What's up, Casey?
What's going on, guys?
Oh boy,
Still having
look
a
at the
good New Year's
headset
out here.
Yeah,
I feel like you're in a furnished basement, Casey.
I am. I'm at my parents' house right now, so
nice.
Not the typical bathroom setup that you guys know and love me for.
With the globe.
yes. I'll never forget that. The globe in the bathroom. I love it.
It has to have some ambiance, okay?
It does.
So,
you're a classy
I'm
god.
at my parents' house right now, so
that's cool. That's very cool. Oh man, so 2022. We got a bunch of great people in here. Billy Jenkins, Steve Poole, Ryan Cox, JT, the Podfather himself, lurking in the shadows.
Cool.
So this is good, man.
Dude,
Casey,
this mouse is a life changer.
The mouse, the like electronic computer mouse.
Yeah, like I have my mouse set up so I can scroll through things and do things from 5 feet away.
Nice. Look at you joining the 21st century.
Oh my god. The only thing I need to figure out. So I got this monitor for free from Raj because he had apparently his parents just moved down and they had like 6 TVs, he said. So we had this little 32-inch at the other shop for our security cameras. He wasn't using it, so he gave it to me. And I have the remote. It was covered in like curry powder or something. He's Indian, so there's always like some sort of weird seasonings and stuff around the shop, usually loose in a drawer somewhere, so everything's just covered. And I need to figure out how to change the settings on it and like lighten the screen some, because I feel like for me it seems a little dark, but that's some first world problem stuff right there. So I can play WoW from across the room.
Yeah, I know
I've
you're
never played WoW.
Complaining about a free TV is what I'm getting out of this.
No, I need to find the manual, because all the buttons I press, nothing happens. I'm trying to get the display options, unless I can change them on my Mac.
I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to get this boom arm working correctly in terms of like first of all, like I put it right here because I felt like it's perfectly right in front of my face. So forgive me if it's overly loud or poppy because I'm popping into it, but I got to figure out this whole 2x4 scenario because this thing ain't going to cut it week in and week out. So, but it's a work in progress, much like everything else.
Great.
Also, before I forget,
thank you for showing up to Snakes and Stogies. I'm sure it's going to be a fantastic episode tonight. We're brought to you by Puget Sound Pythons. I think we've already done this before, but I don't really have Snakes and Stogies by myself, so I'm going to try to not have beer.
We also have,
you guys back?
Because the magazine had a Patreon. I've switched the Patreon for the magazine over to a THN Patreon, and I added a $1 tier. So for $1 a month, if you want to support the show, there's a couple options on there. No pressure. If not, no big deal. We just left, it's there. So I don't like to be pushy with Patreons. Just letting people know it exists for $1 or up if you want. There you go.
Excellent. So, how was everyone's holidays? How was everyone's New Year's?
I think New Year's Eve, I was in bed and asleep before like 11:30. So
you're kidding,
dude. New Year's Eve for me, it's I don't know. It just doesn't do much for me. It's another year. There's nothing terribly exciting about that for me. It's just.
Well, Casey, you went out of town, right?
Yeah, I went out to Chattanooga with some of my friends from high school, actually. So
Chattanooga,
kind of cool. It's the first time we've actually really been able to hang out together in like a couple years. But yeah, it was crazy. Where we're walking around out in Chattanooga, we're wearing shorts and a t-shirt because it's 80 degrees.
Wow.
We're having a hard time finding restaurants because for some reason, like. Apparently, it's not common for restaurants to be open on New Year's Day in Chattanooga. So we went to the same restaurant like 3 times.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was a great time. I wish we could have shot some fireworks off. I feel like it's breaking the tradition a little bit if we can't have fireworks, but we didn't this time.
Yeah, even if you don't actually light them yourself, as long as you're in like arm's reach of them, I think that's fine.
Yeah, I completely agree. We definitely had some neighbors and stuff like that shooting them off, so that was pretty cool. But yeah, no, good time. It's kind of weird though. Like I said, 80 degrees. I come back here and there's like dusting up in the mountains, like the very next day. So yeah, I actually spent most of the day cutting up a tree with my dad because we had over at the cabin we had a tree fall right across the driveway, so I couldn't get in.
Dude, the winds up there insane.
Yeah, like we had full on thunderstorms.
It was unbelievable last night. We're talking like hurricane level winds, but like very little rain. It was crazy. I don't know if you got that down there, Phil, or not, but
no, not at all.
Holy crap! Like I woke up at 5 this morning and thought the freaking house was about to blow over. Like.
You're having a Dorothy moment.
Yeah. Started clicking my heels together and everything. My red heels.
Yeah, I have an old cage that I'm trying to get fixed on the back porch right now. And it blew over in the middle of the night, which was very loud and kind of scary.
Wow. Yeah, actually, I saw the picture you sent us earlier. That tree was, forgive me for if nobody's ever experienced this, good for them, because it's a crappy thing to have to do what you did today. Like, it's just annoying, but that tree was the perfect size where it's too big to just drag off the road yourself, but it's also too big that you couldn't just drive over it. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, absolutely. And like, I hadn't been to the cabin in a few days because I've been out of town. So I'm going around and I pull up to the driveway and it's like, crap. I pull that up. I'm like, well, I know what I'm doing today. I thought I was going to go up and, check on the animals, make sure they were okay, maybe throw some stuff together to kind of see and, just make a quick little day up there. And then I saw that. I was like, I got to call my dad. We got to get our chainsaws ready to go.
Yep.
So it was kind of fun though. I like doing that kind of thing. So
yeah, it's cool to get outdoorsy in that regard from time to time.
Yeah. And I mean, me and my dad we're known to fight a lot when it comes to manual labor and stuff like that. So this time I was kind of very, very go with the flow with my dad, which made it go infinitely better. So, I'm 27 now, so it's good that I finally figured out that, hey, when we're doing something like that, just kind of roll over a little bit and just let him do his thing, and maybe we won't start yelling at each other. So that's good.
Yeah. Only took you 27 years to figure that out, right?
All right. Well, 2022.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Fighting over who gets to destroy stuff with the chainsaw.
Yeah, I mean, that was another big part of it too, was I didn't, we kind of took turns a little bit with it, but for the most part, my dad had to get a hip replacement 2 years ago now. So I mostly just let him use the chainsaw and like I just dragged stuff off in the woods and threw it in. So we made the rabbits around there happy. So there's that.
Nice. Honestly, the thought of Casey with a chainsaw is mildly terrifying.
the sheer frustration on his face, like I imagine him like looking at it, because I feel like Casey's very much like me, where you can't just hack at it. You have to be like strategic in your cuts.
Surgical.
Yes.
Absolutely. Like you got to know exactly which two you're going to cut at which time, and then like, okay, well, I got to drag these out of the way now, and yeah. And the problem is like neither of us are very like well versed with a chainsaw, so we kept doing that classic thing where you'd cut in, and then the log would like bend in just enough to just catch the chain.
Yeah.
And then we'd have to like go through this whole process of getting the chain unstuck and that kind of thing.
Yep.
So for the people listening that don't know, you're supposed to cut down and then go up a little bit. And we didn't do that. So for future reference, watch some videos on how to cut a tree up with a chainsaw, because very annoying to have to unpry a chainsaw that's wedged in between a tree that's bent down.
Yeah, when I went and saw you in Georgia, when we went to Helen, and we met my friend JT. What's so funny?
Nothing.
So my lovely girlfriend Anna Maria is in the group chat, and she is breaking my stones about how I cut with a knife. Anyway, by the way, Casey, Anna Maria says hello. What the hell was I going to say? No, we're talking about chainsaws and cutting.
Something about JT.
Oh, yes. So my good friend JT, he lives up in Northeast Georgia, and I don't know how he got into this, but he had a ton of pine and oak on his property, and he got into like the hobby of, and forgive me if I'm saying this wrong, felling trees. Basically like the art of being a lumberjack. And
sounds
like,
right to me.
Yeah.
Outfit and all.
Well, I mean, he always wore flannel, so that's irrelevant. But
it's comfy.
But yeah, but he would show me. He's like, yeah, I have this type of chainsaw for this, and that type of chainsaw for that. And then he showed me like these special wedges that he made from wood, so that he can position the tree and cut it just right, so he can stand there and let it fall exactly where he wants it. It was absolutely incredible. But then I got to thinking, I was like, you're just chopping down all the trees on your property, you psycho.
Dude,
I can see you like getting into that hobby and trying to like learn how to cut down everything, and then you turn around like 3 months later and you realize like, oh, I've clear cut everything in my property.
Isn't there some sort of like competitive sport of like log cutting?
I think that's what I think it is. I think it's that the felling like, or falling or
maybe that is where they like have to carve certain things and like cut certain widths in half in a certain amount of I don't know.
Yeah.
It's on ESPN 8 the Ocho.
The Ocho. Ryan Cox, you're a jerk.
Phil gets stuck between the slots in the fork.
Oh
Mask.
man. Oh, all right. 2022. Love
We're
it.
off with the bang. I am
We are.
ready to start warming up some snakes.
Are you now?
We're actually over the break because we've been gone for 17 days, I believe, 18 days. Over the course of that 2 weeks, it's been legitimately mid 70s damn near every day.
That's crazy.
So
man.
it almost got to the point where I just was like, why am I even bothering cooling some of these things? And of course, I was talking to Jake about it the other day because he came by the shop and was hanging out. And I was like, man, I'm going to pull those snakes. He's like, don't, because he looked at the weather. And this week it's supposed to be like 40s and 50s. And it is actually cold now. So I was like, I guess I'll wait. I was originally planning to pull stuff the 17th. And I guess I'll see how it goes. I may end up pulling stuff a little earlier. Mainly the Bairds and the Corns. And then just leave like the Diones and the Bimaculata and leave those in a little extra, give them more time.
Let me ask you, with that spike in the temperature, did you go in and change water bowls or take poop out or anything? Okay.
I emptied bowls. So I refilled bowls. And then about 2 weeks ago, I went ahead and just pulled bowls and dumped them. So they don't have any water at the moment, but they're not going to need, really need any for the next week or so because they're going to be coming out soon. So
yeah.
But yeah, I mean, most of them, almost all of them were out and about and interested in what I was doing and watching me and all that. So we shall see.
Good stuff. How many things you got put in the cold?
Almost half as far as rat snakes go. The thorn scrubs, multiple pairs of Bairds, 2 pairs of corn snakes, the Diones, the Bimaculata, and I think that's about it. But about half of that is Bairds, and some of them, not all of them, a couple of them are just extra males that I just decided to put down just to cut back on food, which actually, that's one of the other reasons I hadn't warmed them up yet is because I took kind of a hit on my feeder supply because I had a issue with my reservoir tank and my mouse rack where they weren't getting water for a couple of days because I usually clean on Sundays, check on Wednesdays, and then clean on Sundays again. And at some point between that Sunday and that Wednesday, they weren't getting any water, and so I lost a handful of adults to cannibalism for whatever reason. Yeah. When mice get thirsty, they get bloodthirsty, and literally whoever's the weakest in the group is the one that gets turned into food.
Yep.
Which they had food, but dehydration seems to make them do pretty weird things. So I took a hit on production there. It's a little bit of a setback. So I got that other rack built now as of yesterday, and now that I have some fuzzies and stuff that I'll be raising up, I'll start stocking those bins and hopefully be back in full swing within the next, 2 or 3 months. So
it's good.
Yeah.
Yeah. So going back over the warming stuff up right now, I've kind of noticed with the weather in the Southeast seems to pretty consistently have a decent warm up for like 2 or 3 weeks, and like around Christmas time ish, like sometime around in there. So what I think I've done with my collection is you kind of have to pick which side of that you want to warm up during, and I've picked the early side. So in other words, I warm stuff up around Christmas. Usually I start dropping things around Halloween because I know Halloween's going to have, some nights down into the 50s, into the 60s, stuff like that, which for what I have is fine. I'm starting to think if I get heavier into the colubrids, I need to do, so like the colubrids go to sleep during Christmas instead to kind of break that that cycle of what you're saying of everything wakes up for 2 or 3 weeks during Christmas because, oh my God, it's 75 degrees and I don't know why.
It drops again and they're like, what the hell?
So I don't know. I feel like it gets a little bit colder, like the second go around. So like January, February gets a little bit colder.
Sure. Even down by me, I mean, it's 65 right now, and it was 83 yesterday. It was like 82 today. So yeah.
But that's one of the reasons why, if this, and I mean, it's been fairly warm the last couple of Christmases here. but maybe I should look into getting a cooler to where I can keep them at a steady 55 for a nice consistent chunk of time. Maybe do it like Casey's saying, because I know like our buddy JT at Silent Hill Reptiles, and a couple of our other buddies put down their stuff around October. I think Jessica Hare at Hare Hollow Farm, when her corns and stuff, she puts them down earlier in the year and warms them up earlier too. So maybe I'll end up switching to that next year, this year actually, I guess, but we'll see. Or I may just end up investing in a cooler and using that. But for me, like, cooling is more than just getting the snakes ready. It's loading up on feeders, like loading up on pinkies, getting the freezer stocked. And I mean, I kind of dropped the ball on that one this time, but now that we're going to be up in production, Jake and I with Smith Farms stuff, and then it won't be an issue anymore, but we'll see. Still kind of navigating the whole thing.
That's good. I made a bonehead error. So I've been talking about pairing up these IJs for 3 years now, whatever it is. And they're just so small, man. And I'm just apprehensive. And, Billy, brings me out of my apprehensiveness. And he's like, dude, just put them together, see what happens. So I did. And they basically look at each other and they sleep together and they're hide together. And that's about the extent of it. And I was watching them, like, man, they're like cruising around. They're active all night. And I'm like, this is weird. Why are they doing this? And it occurred to me that I never turned their heat off. So for the past probably 50 days or so, I mean, probably like, a month and a half, whatever, almost 2 months, they've been together and they're not cooling down at all. They're just living together, and it's like 80 in the tub. And I'm like, what the hell did I do? So I unplugged the heating element and we'll see what happens. Another year without IJs, whatever. But
see, that's IJs in particular. I've had this conversation with Jake and Billy where I really wonder if you can breed chondros year round and they're occupying a pretty similar range, why wouldn't you not be able to do that with IJs?
Right. And I agree wholeheartedly. The only, and when I say cool them down, they're literally going from 80 to 70. So it's not like they're not getting cold at all. They just don't have a heating element to give them a hot spot or really to they don't really have that.
There's a noticeable drop.
There's a noticeable drop of 10 degrees in ambient, as well as not having a hot spot. Excuse me for fumbling my words there, but yeah.
Even with the chondros, though, I didn't really bother doing that. I put the male in with the female and just waited until I saw action because she was receptive and that was the right window,
Yeah, but did you do it in July or did you do it in February?
I initially put them together in June and got eggs in December.
Right. So if you had flip-flopped that around, if you had put them together in December, would it be the same result? I don't think it would.
I don't know. Like I said, I knew she would let him know when she was ready. So, I saw a handful of copulations between that time of that 6 months, but didn't see actual like egg action until November, December. So,
yeah, I think that I agree with you that it doesn't really matter, but at the same time, if the room is naturally going to drop, I might as well kind of go with the flow of things. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And that was my thought process on it. So, like, for example, I have that one Pyromelina that has not eaten. I got the thing in Daytona, and it's a flawless specimen. It was eating. It was assist fed prior to my acquisition of it. And I am not a big fan of assist feeding. I don't like the stress of it. I like to try ulterior motives. And I tried almost all my ulterior motives and it didn't want it. And, everyone says pyros need a winter. So I put her in a brand new container with some of her flattened toilet paper rolls that she had, pooped and peed on, and a water bowl. And now she's living in the living room, which is about between 68 and 71, maybe on average. Keep it a little chilly in there. And she's out chilling, slithering around, loving life. So I don't think it's cold enough to she definitely knows it's a seasonal change, but I don't think
Mhm.
it's cold enough to instigate that feeding just yet.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna wait another this is January now, so I figure at the end of the month I'll put her back on heat and give her food and see what happens. So
I've heard of people doing something like that with Alterna, where they come out of the egg, they don't even feed them. Like they go into brumation, they get their first meals when they warm them up.
yeah, and I mean obviously this is not a real brumation at all. This is just a temperature drop with no hotspot, but it's the best I can do with what I got right now. I mean I have the chiller, but I don't feel comfortable putting a baby in a freezer, so to speak. You know what I mean? Like I just maybe
I
it's
get it.
yeah, I'm a wuss. So
Yeah. My dad, my dad, when he was doing all the Alterna stuff and King stuff, he had a nice, like 6 foot tall cooler that he could set to 55 on the dot. And he just covered the front with like a sheet of tarp that he could just roll up when he needed to check on things. And of course, hindsight's 2020. And I wish I had known that I could have probably used the hell out of that thing, because just as inconsistent as the winters are, especially here in the Southeast, it's really frustrating, especially with the bimaculata and the Diones that really do need to get consistently cold, like not chilly, like cold, like 50s at least or at most, um, to have weeks that are 75, almost 80, 74, 76. I don't know if those are even going to go this year. I'm going to try them out anyways and see what happens, but it sucks. Like the corns and bears, I'm not really all that worried about. They haven't been fed. They've been kept dark. They've gotten cooler weather, so they know something's up. But with the stuff like the Chinese stuff in particular, and I need to talk to the Crawdaddy about this, and see what he's doing or what he did, because they've been having the same issue up there in West Virginia.
Yeah.
Like it's been freakishly warm up there. And so I need to talk to him and sort of iron that out. But it sucks. It's frustrating.
Yeah, and see, here's the thing too, is I think I go back to like what Matt Most told me a while ago was in the wild, there's going to be peaks and valleys. The same way that you'll have days where it's, 45, 46 degrees day and night for a whole week, and then you'll spike up to like a 70-degree day, and then it'll go back. And at the same time, it'll be 40 at night, but it'll be 60 during the middle of the day when the sun's at its peak, So those peaks and valleys are okay. And I don't see why something like the Diones, where you live in a climate that gets to the temperature they need naturally. I think if you just like put them in the garage, so to speak, figuratively speaking, if there was ups and downs in the temp, I don't think it would play that big of a factor, because it's going to be the same thing in the wild where they're from, right? It's not straight 47 degrees exactly for however long it needs to be, or is it? I don't really know.
So did you guys have a chance to listen to the Colubroid episode about brumation?
100%, man. What a great episode.
It was really, I got to listen to it on the way back from Chattanooga this week. So I thought it was really interesting where they talked about the concept of the hibernaculum, where they can go underground to a place that it might be the only spot in like 100 square meter area,
right?
But it's where every snake in the area goes to, and it stays like a consistent 50-ish Fahrenheit,
right?
Maybe a little bit colder, a little bit hotter, but how many hormones are triggered by being in complete darkness and by being around 50 degrees like that for 3 months, something like that.
Yeah,
that's been my question for a long time, is like, what's the minimum? Like how long, not the minimum in terms of like how fast can I cool these and then pair them, but naturally, like physiologically, how long do they have to be cold and dark for spermatogenesis or any of those hormonal shifts to happen? Like, could I cool corns in theory for 3 weeks and be like, warm them up, cool, it's winter, and their bodies have said, okay, I did my thing, like, let's go. I don't know if there's any studies or anything that have been done on that. I listened to that brumation episode. I need to listen to it again, because like the last half or so I was doing something else and wasn't completely focused on
yeah.
I was kind of in and out as far as paying attention to what was being said.
Right.
But But that's just something I've wondered about, especially with the corns, and I wonder about that here. I mean, we were just talking about that the other day in the group chat. Like, are the snakes locally, at least where me and Phil are they truly going down, or do they just have like week or 2 week periods where they're much more sedentary than normal because it's cold, and then when those weeks that it's warm, they're moving around? Like, I'm still seeing people finding snakes on the South Carolina snake identification group. There's still people posting, like, stuff's still moving. Someone in like the beginning of December, local to me, saw an eastern diamondback on one of the colder days, and it was, I think, high 50s, low 60s.
Wow.
So it's like, I just wish I had a better idea of exactly sort of what was going on.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to, like, speaking of the brumation bonanza episode or whatever its name was, forgive me. Crawdaddy speaks about a corn snake in Virginia or North Carolina is going to hibernate, but a corn snake in Miami is not at all. And they're the same exact species, and they're going to go through the same quote unquote cycle in one way or another. And we've always, like, me and my friends down here, we've always assumed, like, okay, when it's chilly, they're chilling. And they're basically sitting back, and they may not be in a hibernative state, but they're sitting back and they're like, man, it is cold. It is wet. I don't want to go out there. I'm just going to wait for it to get a little warmer. I still got some food in me. We're good. And then when they do get that peak, they go out, find a lizard or another snake, or God bless, a rodent. And then another week or 4 days later, maybe it gets a little chillier. But I think it all comes down to those regional localities, and they're all still doing the same thing. It's just, how are they doing it? You know what I mean?
Well, that's what makes me wonder. Sort of the common denominator there is photo period. Does photo period play a much bigger part in triggering things than it's given credit for? Because that's really the only constant between those.
But it's not.
If we're talking about in corns from Miami to North Carolina, Virginia, they're going to have shorter days in the winter, just the same.
But they're not, though, because there's access. So, like, for example, right now where you are, Justin, what time does it get dark?
Probably about 6 now. It was about 5:30 up until a couple weeks ago, but now it's starting to get a little longer. Like, we're past the solstice
up here today too.
So this is a little cockamamie what I'm about to say, but so because I'm lower than you guys, in terms of latitude, I get more light than you, right? And we have daylight savings, so we do the clocks forward and backwards and all that crap, right? Which I absolutely hate. And because I hate it, I never change the clock in my car. So my car is either on time or it's an hour slow, or however you want to factor it, right?
Psychopath.
And I mean, I never look at the damn thing anyway. But anyway, it comes down to the snakes. They don't know what daylight savings is. They don't know it's 7 o'clock. They just know it's dusk. It's, it's crepuscular time, whatever.
Right, but the daylight hours are shorter.
They're shorter.
There are less of them.
There are less of them, but I don't think it plays a role as much by me as it does by you, or it does in Virginia, or it does in New York, where it's getting dark at 4 in the afternoon.
So I'm going to throw a monkey wrench into that, though.
Yeah.
You're saying, okay, sometimes in Miami it gets kind of cold and it gets really wet and everything's going to start hiding.
Casey's crepuscular.
Yes, I am. By you, naturally, they're going to be going into gopher tortoise burrows when it gets like that. So they're going to be getting some pretty extreme photo period stuff, just because they're going deep underground. They're going 50 feet underground when it starts getting cold, because that's the driest place.
Yeah, but I've never found a corn snake where there would be gopher burrows. So that doesn't mean they're not there. I'm just saying, like, if I'm in the glades and everything is under 6 inches of water, and there's some higher elevation here and there, there's no quote unquote high sandy elevation. There's no palmetto scrubs. There's no oak hammocks. There's no flag ponds. It's straight up cypress heads and sawgrass. And there's corn snakes there, and there's rat snakes there. They may go under a rock, but they're not going 8 to 10 feet underground to go for tortoise burrow. You see what I'm saying? Because the habitat is inhabitable. No, gophers can't live there. We'll call it that.
Inhospitable.
Yeah, okay, maybe I was just making that up. So
No, but I mean,
well, not really making it up, but like that's kind
No,
of
but
that was
that
my
makes-
thought process. Was
Yeah.
gopher tortoise burrows are so important in the drylands of Florida.
100%. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if it's a gopher's tortoise burrow that's 10 feet down, or it's a marsh rabbit that's only a foot down or 2 feet down. They're still getting more of that darkness. And for species that are highly nocturnal, like a corn snake, it makes sense that they would just wait until either the temperature drops, whether it be a little bit because they're in the burrow, or it's a lot because they're close to the surface, or they notice that the sun is gone or going down, or whatever. Maybe there's the dew point rises. Who knows? But I don't think the photo period on a Miami corn in the wild plays as great a factor as it does on an Okatee in the wild.
Let's see. Iper chimed in. He said day length is irrelevant based on time zones. Day length is based on latitude. It also means the closer to the equator, the shorter the annual change to day length. Circadian rhythms and shelter site usage is irrelevant. One is a conscientious decision. The other is a physical element.
Yeah, that's a very academic way of what I was trying to say. Thank you, Scott. Love it.
But you see what I'm saying as far as like at that being like where it's going to be warmer in Miami than it will be in the, the highlands of North Carolina. There's still going to be shorter days in the winter. Like that's going to be the one sort of constant in a roller coaster of temperatures and other variables.
Yes,
I don't know.
I agree. I can
that I've wondered about.
Yeah. And Ryan Cox asked earlier about just keeping them in total darkness. And I never do that just because I think about, I mean, we can anthropomorphize them as much as we want, but the mental state, man, it's like, yeah, I can give a human 3 square meals a day with, and keep them in darkness. They're going to suffer. Like we need light, everything needs light. Oh my God. I just touched it and it moved.
Freeze.
Yeah, right. Don't move. All right. Anyway, it's good. It's good. So yeah, I think that they should have light. I think they should have photo period, even if it is reduced on purpose or reduced naturally. I don't know. I haven't bred enough shit. I'll tell you that.
I don't know. There's different hormone stuff for different localities. I know there was a study a while back on common snapping turtles, where they're sex determined by temperature. So there's almost I think it was different hormones are used higher in higher latitudes and in lower latitudes, because if the same ones were used, then you'd have more, I think it's more males when it's hot. So you'd have more males in the southern end than in the northern end. So different localities had different hormones they used to determine who was going to be a boy and who was going to be a girl, because, the ones you use in Miami are not going to be the same ones you use up in Michigan.
Yeah. Very interesting. Very interesting.
Hyper said within a state like Florida, your change between the border near the Carolinas and Keys is going to be around 15 minutes max. So,
okay, that's actually a lot less than I thought. I thought it was going to be more, but it makes sense.
And Cox meant just for the brumation period. So my dad always kept his stuff in the dark for the most part during winter. Not only with just the alternative stuff within the recent years, but in the past when we bred corns, he kept things darker. I won't say he kept them completely dark all the time. So I've always kind of just done it that way, just because that's what I always assumed was the way it was.
And it's easy too. Yeah.
You're assuming everything's under something, at least in cold, like real winters, not the southern pseudo winters.
Right.
So I don't know. I think the lack of food coupled with a lower temperature is sort of the main triggers for them to realize, okay, see, like cooling season is here, like brumation time is now. And then like that's the two main factors for me. And I'm sure photo period, like I said, I feel like it may play a bigger part in it in general, not even necessarily brumation, but I feel like photo period is overlooked a lot.
Yeah.
But so
I do know in poultry science too that photo period is the main thing they use to trigger delay. Yeah. So it's very important with birds, which makes me think that it's probably at least fairly important with reptiles.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the more I think about it, so when I worked for Jay Eaton, he had 23 adult breeder female monocle cobras, all different types and such. And
Sunset.
actually, I don't think they were sunsets. They're mostly normals and albinos and some double monocles. Anyway, so when he would do his cooling, it would be they were in 3-foot vision cages with multiple snakes in each vision, and then everything was stripped out except for like a cork round or like one of those half turtle hut things and a water bowl, and then the front glass was covered over with newspaper, and the only light that would get in is from, for those of you who aren't aware, 3-foot visions, they have like a slant in the back with perforated aluminum as like a screen vent, and you would hang your fluorescent lights on the back of that slope. So the only light getting in there was through those little holes, and they were in a warehouse where they had fluorescent lighting. So if we weren't there, the lights weren't on, and they had no reference of sunlight. So does that count as keeping them in the dark the whole time? You know what I mean? Or are they still getting, they still know it's like, because we were there every day anyway, doing some kind of work, But at the same time, it was dramatically, dynamically darker when we were cooling them. I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, what kind of that with that species in particular, I see them being more of a wet and dry season rather than actual temperature season.
Yeah, and that was the ambient temperature of the room, whatever 78, 80 degrees, whatever the warehouse was. That never changed for them. It's just we removed the basking light, removed the UVB, and that was it. So
I feel like Rob Stone and Matt Most are going to message us once they hear this and be like, "You guys are idiots."
Of course.
And then Stone will just spell it all out for us. It'll be like, "Of course, that's exactly like."
Yeah.
We got to get him on here again, both of them.
Right. I feel bad because as much as we loved that brumation episode, the whole point of this conversation was just talking about what we got going on in terms of temps, and it snowballed into
humidity is a whole nother thing.
Brumation light. Yeah. Oh, and of course, Cox, Dr. Wyman's definitely going to give us a dissertation in a few days once he gets a chance to listen to it, and I love it when he does that. It's great. So, but that goes also to one of the reasons why I wanted Casey to come on tonight. Is Casey and I had a fantastic conversation the other night, us just BSing on the phone about enclosures and taking the human element out of it as much as humanly possible, pun intended. And before we segue into that, I've really been looking at Applegate enclosures, and not just for my pyros, just for like almost everything. You know what I mean? Especially colubrids. And it doesn't have to be an Applegate enclosure verbatim, but right. I was thinking about when you go to Office Depot and they have those little like micro filing cabinet, little drawer, plastic drawer things that you'd put on your desk, and like one's got staples and one's got post-it notes. You know what I'm talking about? I thought about taking one of those and basically finding a Sterilite tub that would fit, like let's say it's 3-tier, right? Find a Sterilite tub that would fit the top 2, keep the bottom one there, right? So it's like a micro Applegate, aquarium sealing it where it needs to be. So there's essentially just 2 drawers and a link between them, and then put some kind of, I don't know, like ducking tape or something to reflect that heat upwards so the bottom stays colder, room temp, whatever, and then the top part has the heating element. And basically make like a pseudo micro plastic Applegate enclosure.
Like one of those giant hamster utopia things.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, kind of like that. Yeah, if only they weren't so ventilated, right?
And you know what the irony of that is like the Applegate stuff, those aren't a new thing. But as much as people talk about enrichment and how you need to be doing all these different things, it seems to me that no one's stopped and said, how come we aren't doing stuff like the Applegate enclosures? Because that's like the epitome of like, you're getting the caging that you want, but you're also filling all those needs, or, at least a very large majority of those needs that animal will take advantage of.
Sure.
With the different, parameters of each section. And Casey dropped out, so he'll be back.
Yeah, I'm sure he will.
Iper said photo period should be classified based on latitude, i.e. tropical and a 12 year-round temperature or temperate, a 1410 to 1014. That's hours, hour-long days. And cool temperate 16:8 to 18:8:16. Good Lord. And humidity is entirely another beast in itself, because even in the winter down here, it's considerably more humid than a lot of other places. Good Lord.
Sorry, though. My windproof lighter was not windproof.
KZ. Ruh-roh.
Is he giving us his
I'm back.
Zoolander?
Did everybody drop or was it just me?
You did.
No, it was just you.
His blue steel. The Tigra.
Magnum.
I saw.
Yeah. Did everybody drop or was it just me?
No, it was just you.
Okay, cool.
I think he's still delayed.
He is a little bit. But there was this meme I saw. It was, remember Zoolander did the calendar and it was the same face, just different colored shirts.
Right.
Someone did put that and they it was all the Glock generations.
That's fantastic.
Made me laugh.
That's good.
Pretty good.
That's good. And Billy Jenkins, I'll send you some Applegate enclosure pictures off air.
Can you explain it? Paint them a picture exactly of
yeah.
I can't describe it as well as you have in the past. But
so I had no idea what the hell this was, and I heard all these people that we all look up to and respect, especially in the king snake world. And essentially, Applegate realized that these animals were heavily subterranean, despite them being a king snake. You know what I mean? This is not some kind of worm snake that only lives underground. It's not Micrurus that only lives underground and only comes above the ground to, feed and then go back underground. They live in these nooks and crannies of these rock crevices and creek beds and escarpments. So what Applegate did was he basically made a enclosure where the top of the enclosure looked like a normal enclosure. It would open however it opened. You had a heat lamp, you had, UV if you wanted it, water bowl, multiple hides. Maybe there were some elevated platforms, and then at the bottom on the substrate layer, there was some kind of opening to another chamber below the enclosure that was basically an underground, quote unquote, subterranean enclosure that had no light, no heat. There may have been a water bowl down there. There may have been a humid hide in there with sphagnum moss or wet paper towels or whatever you use to generate humidity. And now you've created the microclimate underneath the primary, habitat.
Mm-hmm.
But the cool thing wasn't that bottom, underground cave was a drawer like your dresser, and you could slide it out and remove eggs, change the substrate, whatever. And then if you had to clean the top cage, you just open like normal and clean the top cage like normal. So now you basically could allow the animal to go underground, so to speak, when it wanted to, and then come above ground when it wanted to. Now you can do rain season. You could do cold weather climate where the top is really cold and the bottom is not so cold. Kind of like we talked about, like the hibernaculum type stuff.
Isn't there like varying humidity levels too between them all?
Yeah, in fact, I'm pretty sure Chris's friend John was saying that each corner of the cage would not only have a different temperature, but it would have a different humidity. So depending on the size of the cage, of course, if you're doing it in a 20 long, it ain't going to work too well, but depending on the type of cage, and then certain materials that you use that would hold humidity better, i.e. acrylic or, beech wood or teak wood or whatever, and that's the concept. And forgive me if I'm butchering the actual Applegate design, but the concept is having a primary habitat above a microclimate cave or a microclimate, den. And that's what all the the Great Pyro guys do, and the Leonis guys do, and the Western milk snake species. That's what they do, and it works like $1 million for
Yeah,
them.
I mean that's about as close as you're gonna get to sort of those little areas within rock piles and things, like the cuts and stuff that we even saw in Texas. And I don't think you're gonna get any closer than a setup like that.
Yeah, I was actually talking to my coworker. He's getting really big into do-it-yourself cage stuff, and we were talking about how you'd have to get a big enough exo, but in theory, you could have an Exoterra, whether it be on a island in your home where you can access the back and the front, or you have it on like a Lazy Susan and you could spin it around. But you could basically have one side be the outside wall of a cut or an escarpment, and then in the cracks and fissures of the wall, it's a gateway to the other side where there's no light and high humidity, and it's like the inner cave dwelling of the rock escarpment, but it's all foam and grout.
Michael Gillen said, "Great for Pituovus. I'm sure Subox would benefit from the Applegate design too," which I have no doubt Subox would be all about it. And Scott said those enclosures have been used in Australia and Europe for 3+ decades, which doesn't surprise me.
Yeah. It wouldn't surprise me if those people talked to Applegate 30 years ago, So, or maybe he stole it from the Aussies. Who knows?
And Dragonlair said, "My MBK has that type of caging, and he stays in the bottom 98% of the time. Comes out as soon as the UV light comes on for about 15 minutes every couple days."
Yeah, and that's interesting because I have Mexican Black Kings, and I have them on Aspen, and it's funny how they avoid the heat as if it's too hot for them. But it's not that it's too hot for them. It's that they pushed all the aspen to the cold side so they can sprawl out on the warmth. And then they go and hide in what their best attempt at being subterranean under the aspen on the cold side. Because I would always check my thermostats and be like, oh man, is my rack too hot? And I look and it's like, no, these temperatures are perfect. What the hell are they doing? And you start to look at the signs.
I've had some porns do that.
Yeah, they just move everything out of the way. They get warm and then they go and hide. So
it's actually the opposite. Usually they push the substrate more to the back, and I just leave it. It's whatever.
Yeah, let them do.
Scott said he tried those cages and he got rid of them. So
yeah,
isn't Wheeler's doing something like that with a scrub? Isn't he, or some carpets? Where he has like 2 PVC cages on top of each other, and he's got some sort of coupling between the two.
I'm unfamiliar with it.
I thought he was doing.
That's what Lawrence did with his scrubs.
Okay,
where
that'd be good for Gagne Soma. Chance and I would be all about that.
So he'd watch the males, and once the males started cruising back and forth across the door to the female's cage, he would open it up, and that's kind of what he would use as a cue to say, okay, the male and the female are kind of both ready to go right now.
Super cool, man.
Cox said, "Blink twice if you're being held hostage, Casey."
Baxter, bark twice if you're in Milwaukee.
Bark twice if you're in Milwaukee. Brandon did that for bleeding. Brandon did that for breeding.
Cool.
Someone said so.
Very cool.
Which, again, that seems to work well for species like scrubs that do a whole lot better if you don't touch them or mess with them or anything like that. You kind of just watch the cues and don't even try to pull the boy out or pull the girl out anywhere and try to get them together. Just, have a door there, see that he's scratching his face up against that door to try to get in, open it up, let them do their thing, let them separate whenever they want to separate. So for species like that, it seems to work really well.
Maybe that is what I'll do with the Jansenite, though. Just get another one of those XT4s from Black Box, put a circle, like a tunnel, cut a circle between the two.
Doorknob cutter, something like that.
And they can have a top and a lower and make the top one warmer, bottom one cooler. More UV in the top one.
Yeah.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, that'd be very cool.
We have to talk to Jen about that.
Yeah. Or even just, I've seen so many people not, So many people they want to do something similar to that, and they don't realize that in theory you can do all that in one enclosure. So let's say we're using a PVC enclosure. You can pop the glass panels off the PVC enclosure, assuming it's a slider, right?
Yeah.
And you can make a hide box that covers the majority of the floor of that enclosure, texture the top of it, maybe even pour dirt on top of it, and there you go. You essentially have it. You know what I mean? And it's a cage inside a cage, so to speak, or a dwelling inside a dwelling. But it's doable. You don't have to have 2 PVC enclosures per se. But if you wanted to try something like that, I don't see why that wouldn't work at least a little bit, providing you'd feather the temperatures.
I say Jansen and I in particular because those are big snakes, and they take advantage of space if you give it to them. So
yeah, I'm noticing that now with the indigos is that I have to find some kind of enrichment for them because they're at the size now where realistically they should have a bigger enclosure, but I don't have the space or the money right now, to be brutally honest, to upgrade them. And they would be fine for the rest of their lives in the enclosures they're at, but now they're getting curious and they're starting to poke.
Why don't you give them like a dig box like I give the Ackies?
So, that was an idea too. And basically what I'm going to start doing is I'm going to start to add in periodically different cork tubes and extra hide boxes and keep it strictly for that exact animal so it starts to smell like them. And then what I can do is maybe every other month or every month change those things out. So they're curious about it. They're going to investigate it. Maybe it smells like them, maybe it doesn't. Maybe I can hide food in there too and just kind of play those games with them to kind of keep their mind off of the fact that they're doing laps like a tiger at the zoo. You know what I mean?
Right.
So at least that was my thought process. So we'll see how it goes.
That's one of the things that P and Cody do that I do like is, them going out and trimming branches from the, the oaks and stuff in their yard and putting those in cages and watching the snakes, go and actually sort of investigate and
Dude, the Gaboon Viper going all the way to the top of the enclosure and going 5 feet up. You know what I mean? Like,
that's weird. It's like watching the sulcata swim, man. It's just, it doesn't feel right. It feels wrong. It makes me uncomfortable. It's not normal.
So on this note, Casey, is this an appropriate segue to go back to the conversation we were talking about the other day?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. Let's jump into it.
So Casey and I were talking about how this year him and I decided to dive into multitude of projects that we had wanted to do for some time and thought that and again, I'm not speaking for Casey, but thought that we knew what we were doing. And it comes to find out that we do, but the way we didn't exactly pan out the way we wanted it to in terms of caging and husbandry and stuff. So we start talking about, what would be ideal? What would be perfect? If you had unlimited money and limited space, what would you have done differently? How would you have done it? And that segued into the human element in terms of people keeping unique species like bolins and, scrubs and some of these rare lizards that, like sun gazers and whatever else, that the human element is clearly what's messing them up to some degree. And we wanted to talk and kind of go around and see why people haven't tried eliminating the human element more. Why are we constantly going in the enclosure and messing with them and taking them out and playing with them and all that? Well, it's because we love them and we want to. But if someone really, like, we'll use bolins, for example, and I've never owned bolins. I've never worked with bolins. Shy of me going, wow, this is really cool, and handing it back to someone, that's the extent of bolins I have. And I'm no one to talk. But just thinking outside the box, how come no one's made a room-sized enclosure for one animal and limited the human element to the best of their ability? And by that, I mean one-way glass. Animal can't see out, human can see in.
Minimal interaction.
Minimal interaction. Only going in the cage when the animal's in its hide box and you've used a robotic arm or a hook or something to close the door. So now the animal's trapped in the box and can't see the human. Food is not thrown in by hand or placed in with tweezers or hemostats. Food is put in via a mechanical arm or a robot or
like
whatever.
the things in prison where you open the door, slide the tray in, and close it again. Like
for lack of a better word, yeah. I mean, and I'm thinking that I wonder if that would actually help or it wouldn't. I mean, Casey, am I missing something?
No, I mean, I do think as keepers, we really underestimate that in our room, we are the most unnatural element in the reptile world, or in the reptile room.
Yeah.
You know, as keepers, we are the main source of stress for these things. And I wonder that too with nest boxes where, I mean, I know I do it whenever I've got things that are wanting to lay eggs or wanting to kind of start sniffing around. I'll like open the nest box and like, oh, let's see what's going on. Like I might not touch anything, but the act of like, oh, let me check to see what this female's doing or something like that. That has to be incredibly stressful because from her, from her perspective, I'm a predator.
Something's come in and messed.
I want to take the eggs.
Yeah.
So
something's been here and has rearranged things.
Right. You know, and I told Casey about when Marcus had the girdle tail, or excuse me, the sun gazers at the museum, and he got one-way glass. And when we walked into the room where their enclosure was, they knew who we were. They knew we were going to feed them. They knew we weren't a threat. And they would sit there and they would watch us and they would turn their head. And if you got too close, they would kind of do one of these real quick, you know, where they kind of like lean to the side, like, are you going to pick me up, human? And then you picked them up and they were a bearded dragon at that point. But when they went in the burrow, you could tell they were completely relaxed. They were completely at ease. They licked each other. They looked at each other. They would sit on top of each other. And we would observe this through this one-way glass. And we had a little red LED or little red, you know, halogen bulb in there just to give them a little warmth. And at the same time, we could see what's going on, you know. And it was a different animal in that burrow. It was. And it wasn't even that big a burrow. But they knew that they were safe and away from us and away from, you know, a secretary bird that was going to eat them. You know what I mean? And why aren't we doing more of that? You know what I mean?
I mean, a lot of it is the control factor. And two, we talked about this, especially with lizards, like, you know, from your perspective, the Nephris geckos and mine, the blue tongues, is how unnatural is it for these animals to actually live solitary lives? Like,
yes.
You said Nephris geckos go out, they go like 100 meters a night or something like that, right?
Yeah, that's my friend Elliot.
Seeing other Nephris geckos every single night. You know, it may be like,
other species
like I'm going to go, you know, lick your tail, or I'm going to do a little threat display and get you to run away. But there has to be some kind of hierarchy or something like that, because we see hierarchies being built up in almost every, you know, at least most of the lizards I've seen. So just this whole idea of, okay, these lizards are being kept in solitary confinement in these small little tubs. You know, that has to be very unnatural for them.
Yeah.
So I don't know. And again, like I've seen what the Australians do with their blue-tongued skinks. They seem to have really consistent success with keeping them in very big outdoor pits where, you know, they say, oh, they don't work in the United States. And I don't know if I want to like call bullshit on that, but like, I don't see why it wouldn't work for at least most of the year.
Yeah.
You know, and you got to let them kind of pick out their own little hierarchies and pick out like, okay, this is when I'm ready to go and I'm going to chase this male off, but you know, you can't leave them together for 6 or 7 hours here in the States because we're trying to keep them in like little 4x2 enclosures.
Right.
And if the female's trying to chase the male off and he can't leave, or from her perspective refuses to leave, she's going to rip his arm off.
Right.
You know, versus in the wild where he can just run away and go behind a spinifex bush or whatever.
Right. That's the same thing too, is with tubs and racks and glass enclosures or glass front enclosures. Just because the human isn't there, you think the animals in those enclosures aren't watching the other animals in that room? They sure as hell can smell them. So even that on itself, so like going back to a very very difficult species like the bolins, you would almost have to do a segregated room for those one or two specific individual specimens. Because I've walked into my room and all of a sudden I hear dink, 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 and it's snakes striking the glass at each other. It's not even me. Like I haven't walked in the room that far for them to see me. But I guess when I flipped the lights on, one of them stood up, or one of them S'd up, and then the other one saw that one, and now they're binking the glass at each other. And it's like, well, that's got to be happening when I'm not there as well. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and I imagine it would be. So,
yeah.
I don't know. I also don't think reptiles are quite as solitary as people think right now. I think that's kind of been. I mean, how many times have you flicked a log over and saw like 2 different species of rat snake, or like a copperhead and a corn snake or something like that under the same big piece of tin?
Yeah,
it happens all the time.
Yeah.
So I don't know, and I know that like as keepers, we're probably not going to convert rooms in our houses into
right,
like single animal things, but there are keepers that do that right now. I mean, we saw that one girl that has the emerald tree boa room where she's got like 7 emerald tree boas in there that are kind of able to just go off and do whatever they want to do. And I wonder how much success she's going to have in there, because like if they want to get away from each other, they're fully capable of getting away from each other in that room, which is kind of the biggest problem with cohabbing, in my opinion, other than, you know, accidentally having one bite the other when you're trying to feed.
Yeah, so, they can't get away from each other because they don't have the space to do it, you know? And I also, that goes to like, I don't know anything about betta fish, but male betta fish obviously kill each other. That's why they're called, you know, Siamese or Japanese fighting fish, right? Because they fight to the death. But if I have a large enough tank with several hiding spots and I put 5 betta males in there together, betta fish males together, there's a high probability that they're going to each have their own respective, and there might be some skirmishes, there might be some you know, some fighting to a degree, but they're not just going to murder each other like they would if I put them in a fishbowl. They're going to have their own respective cubbies and they're going to live normally. So are we giving them those options despite not having the space, or is it irrelevant because they're individually contained on their own regardless?
I don't know. Going to the betta thing, I do know they've done studies where they released 2 into a lake and they actually did fight to the death.
Really?
But you got to think about it. I do wonder if that's like a hierarchy thing where they're both in new territory. So like, okay, we're going to fight over this territory. Where, like you said, if we had like little dividers up in the big tank and then we released it slowly, and like one betta fish on one side, one betta fish on the other, and it's like a 20-foot long aquarium, it'd probably be fine because, I mean, they can't all kill each other in the wild.
Yeah, that's true. But I just remember us when I worked at Pet Supermarket, we had like a perfect cube tank, and somebody like gave it to us or whatever. And one of the managers was like, "Hey, we got these new floating fake plants. Let's put a bunch of them in there, and then we'll put a bunch of bettas in there. And each beta is going to have its own little floating plant." And sure as hell, the guy was right. I think we put 5 bettas in there. And there was like 6 or 7 floating fake plastic plants, and each one hung out under its respective plant. Now, when we were gone, I don't know what happened, but to the best of my knowledge, they never messed with each other. Maybe that's because maybe they were acclimated and I didn't see it. Maybe it's because of how much we were feeding them. Who knows? So I don't know. There you go. Dragon Lair says, "I've kept as many as 5 male bettas in a fully planted 20 long tank with no fighting." So who knows? But I feel like we're getting a little departure there. The whole point of the conversation was, excuse me, are we doing our best on these very difficult or unique species? Are we doing our best to eliminate the human element? And if we're not, does it really even matter? You know what I mean? And I feel like it would take someone with a 30 by 20 room and 2 bolins and copious amounts of funding for, decor, live plants, whatever, to really test something like that. But I don't think it needs to be that grandiose. Am I talking in circles?
No, I don't think so. I don't, but I do think the social hierarchy thing was just kind of us talking about that. I think it really goes back to removing the human element to it is the way more important part of it than like,
Right.
oh, what happens if we put in like 5 of them and see what happens? I'm sure they'd like figure out something like that, but
yeah, and just going back to the whole flipping the tin thing, like you flip the tin and there's a copperhead and a corn snake and they're equal size and they're not necessarily laying on top of each other. They're at different ends of the tin, but they have to know each other are there. And it's almost like, hey man, this is a great spot. I'll let you have your side. I'll have my side. Let's just not mess with each other. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I mean, going back to the whole, like the Nephris gecko example, it wasn't like, oh, they're going to go hang out with each other. It's just in captivity, your Nephris geckos may not see each other for like 3 months, right?
Sure.
Whenever you introduce them. Like, how often would they really go without seeing one another? And it may just be like a quick little like, oh, I'm going to look at you. You're over there. We're both going to run away from each other because, I don't know if you're going to hurt me or not, but it does seem like they'd be interacting with each other a lot more in the wild when they have that much more space to kind of figure out what they want to do versus in captivity where we're kind of artificially, keeping them away from each other.
Right. And I mean, it's just to dive in that more. If you have an 8x10, rectangle of spinifex grass, right, and that's one dune, right, and this big, massive bush of spinifex, there's going to be multiple geckos living in there. There's going to be multiple gecko species living in there, whether it's Strophaurus or Nephris or Ditellas, whatever. They're going to interact with each other to some degree, but let's specifically focus on Nephris and say, okay, one Nephris sees a spider and it starts to stalk it and it gets within strike range. And right before it dives on that spider, another Nephris was doing the exact same thing. And they're not looking at the spider per se, they're looking at each other. And maybe they go, hey man, what are you doing? Well, I don't know. I saw the spider first, and again, we're anthropomorphizing here, but whether one eats the spider or not, at the end of the day, they're not going to duke it out. They're just going to go their separate ways, and they're still going to live their life like normal. However, I feel like if both geckos were doing that exact same scenario and I walked up with a flashlight, they're both going to go, holy crap, and they're going to haul ass back in the spinifex, and they may not come out for a day or two or longer. So I feel like that...
I'd hide from you.
You would hide from me. I just feel like that human element just plays way more of a factor than we really think.
Yeah, absolutely. And you got to think the whole, like, even if you have a hide under your enclosure, how often are you checking it? How often are you cleaning the poop out of it or something like that?
Right.
So if you had an outdoor pit and you had like a simulated gopher tortoise burrow or just a gopher tortoise burrow because you had a gopher tortoise.
Sure.
How tempted would you be to like find some way to reach in there and try to clean it out or, disturb it in some way versus, just letting the gopher tortoise burrow do its thing and somehow bringing some dung beetles or whatever it is that cleans them out.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know. There just seems like, I know I would do it. So I'm assuming a lot of other keepers would do it. There's probably keepers way better than me that would learn how to just leave stuff alone. But, I know with me, I'm like, I'm curious. I want to know what's going on down in there. So my curiosity is definitely going to be messing up some natural process of those animals.
Yeah, I've even thought about on some of the bigger species that wouldn't be able to escape, drilling a pilot hole into the front of an enclosure and then buying one of those like cell phone endoscopes. So I can like slide in this cell phone endoscope, this wire, right, in that pilot hole and just look around. And that way, all they see is this little black wire. And they'd be like, what the hell is that little black wire? And it's not me opening the container and lifting up the high box. And all of a sudden there's this giant eclipse of light and this giant, hairless monkey going, "Oh, you're not breeding? Damn it." You know what I mean?
I do wish we had cameras like the Wise cameras that were small and could fit in a corner of a cage and not have to worry about it being ripped off by something roaming or it'd be great if we had a
well, it's like at Underground when
minimal
when we were pairing the black and white spitters, we got a Nest camera on a magnet, and what you do is it comes with like a lot of these like adhesive metal plates, and you just put a metal plate in each vision cage, right, or each PVC enclosure, and then that week, if you're pairing something, you stick the Nest camera on there. It's Wi-Fi, right, and there's Wi-Fi in the building, so it's just going to route to it, and then you can take the magnet off and move it around. The problem is that the camera's so big, like you were just saying, Justin, that when the Cobras were getting all funky with each other, they'd knock the damn thing over and it would be staring at mulch for 18 hours. It totally defeats the purpose. So.
I keep going back to the Jansenite because that's sort of the only species I have that sort of fits this sort of bill in terms of trying to figure out how to get them to make more of themselves. And I mean they unplug the heat panel all the time. It's like I can't put a camera in there because it'll be torn off in 2 days. I just wish there was like a minimal version of one of those cameras where it's like doesn't have to be any like super high 12K bit rate or anything like that. I just want something that I can check and see what's going on, have a clear-ish picture of what's happening, and it not take up a ton of space.
Yeah, I feel like there's so many small cameras that are like nanny cams that go into a light socket, or these little tiny spy cameras that they put in a desk clock or whatever. Mm-hmm. I'm surprised no one's made something that obviously doesn't have to be secret. It's not your nanny cam. You're not hiding it in the eyeball of a teddy bear on a mantelsill, but something that's maybe like Govee sized that is stickable or magnetic or whatever. And that way it can transmit and you can see, and it's not overly invasive in the enclosure. Scott's mentioning about, habitat partitioning, and he's got a very valid, great point in talking about certain species partitioning habitat, but also I can't remember the term. And Scott, if you remember, let me know. But there's a term for a species that fills its niche, and because it specifically fills that niche, no other subspecies or rival species in that genus inhabits that area because it has its own purpose there, right? And I don't think that plays a factor in the disturbing the peace that we're talking about. Does that make sense? So yeah, I just think that we need to start thinking more about with these more difficult species. We need to start thinking more about how we're going to limit human exposure to keep the animals stress free, in an assumption that the majority of our husbandry or breeding issues with that difficult species is because of the human element.
I think it's that, and also figuring out what's missing. What are we? This is what I think. Boland's come to mind when I think about this. What is it that we're not offering or can't offer that is obviously a big piece of the puzzle that's missing. That for whatever reason no one can seem to pinpoint.
But I do wonder with something like Boland's, maybe it is just a nest box that a really secure, comfortable nest box that is never messed with by a human being. Like, maybe just the act of checking on that female Boland's like every couple weeks, every couple months inside of that nest box is enough for her to realize, hey, this isn't safe for me to lay my eggs. There's a predator nearby. Even if, we say, oh, our animals know us, they blah, 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 blah. Like, how much do they really? And how much does that mentality change when they're inside that nest box? Because you got to think something like a Boland's, they're from such an extreme environment where if there is anything that makes that female think, hey, I will not be able to take my eggs, all the way to live offspring, I'm just not going to waste that life force because I will die and my eggs will die and the future of my species will die.
Yeah.
So I do wonder if a big part of Bolin's issues is you're messing with the nest box too much.
Yeah.
You're not providing a consistent, solid nest box that is what the female wants. And even if you are, you're constantly opening up the latch or like constantly pulling the drawer out just to like look at her. So especially if she's in it.
Yeah.
Is what I'm wondering.
I think going on that same notion, you look at people that have bred king cobras in very large enclosures, they provide them with a multitude of different leaf litters for mom to make the nest. So why, speaking of the Bolins again, maybe people have done this and I don't know because I'm not in that circle, but are people giving them multiple opportunities for a nesting spot, but at the same time giving them multiple options to choose from in terms of nest construction? You know what I mean? We give a corn snake, wet sand and sphagnum moss because it's easy and we know they're going to like it. But same, I give, leopard geckos, a thing of moist sand and they just know, okay, this is perfect. I'm going to bury my eggs in there. Bolins is probably not the case. So if you had a large enough enclosure and you gave them a diversity of options for nesting materials, would that help as well? Because if Casey's from Atlanta Bolins and I'm from Savannah Bolins and Justin's from Beaufort Bolins, well, Casey's got pine needles and I've got cypress leaves and Justin's got palm fronds, palmetto fronds. Well, we're all the same animal. We're all making the same nest, but I prefer my leaves and Justin prefers his and Casey prefers his. So how do we know which animal is going to prefer which bedding or nesting material? You know what I mean?
Well, I mean, I can't get too much into the Canova plan for the new enclosure, but that's definitely a very large part of it is filling the entire bottom up with just different nest sites and different options. Some of them are heated, some of them are filled to the brim with sphagnum moss that's just loose enough for them to get in. Some are, full of hay. Some of them have just a little bit of sphagnum moss and cypress mulch mixed in. So there is, in the plan that I am helping out with currently, that's kind of the idea, along with a cooling system. And I don't necessarily know if UV is important to reptiles. I think that we're discovering that more and more. But I also think that full spectrum lighting cycling with full spectrum lighting may be important, and actually learning how to do that where you're not just flipping the switch on, flipping the switch off. It's okay, well, the blue light comes on at this time and then turns off at this time, and the red light comes on. Like there's actual, cycles daily that go on with the different colors that are being shown.
Right. That goes to, like, you look at some of the coral reef people and they have these, Odyssey lights that the lights dim and fade and certain spectrums are brought out at certain times of the year, and they have these LED lights that are cycled to the moon phases. So depending on, is it waxing, is it waning, whatever, we need to start doing some of that stuff with some of the more trickier species as well, just going on that whole light thing, because you may have everything perfect, but you're just missing that one little magic touch. And I mean, maybe the coral reef people, they do it for aesthetics. Who knows? Oh, I like it because it's cool. It's a full moon outside, so it's a full moon in my coral reef in my living room. Or maybe it's because of coral propagation and an anemone growth and, Nemo looks cuter. Who knows? But I really think that we need to focus on more things like that in terms of making it as natural as we can, because most of us have a lot of them and we're lazy and want to just, crumple up the newspaper and wipe down the tub,
Well, I think you have to remember too, you can definitely overcomplicate this. You can add way too many elements that are not needed to something like this.
Oh yeah.
I do know that there are some scrub guys that have had really good luck with scrubs, just keeping them in pretty simplistic enclosures near a window, not directly against a window, but they can see the natural light cycle. They can kind of get that idea of, okay, this is what the year is doing. It's starting to go from like 13 hours of light to 8 hours of light. And even if it doesn't do that in the wild, you're still triggering some hormonal changes in the animal, just seeing that.
Even if they see the seasons change themselves, they see the leaves change color, they see the green come back, whatever it may be,
Barometric pressure shifts. I mean, a fall day feels completely different than a summer day, even if it's the same temperature.
Yeah, it's true.
But I do think with Boelens too, I think overbasking is a very large part of it. You look at Pro Exotic. Pro Exotic, they would ultrasound their Boelens pythons every single year, and they would consistently do the same thing, which is they would breed, they would build their follicles, they would grow them just like every other python, and then when they would reach just at or just before 40 millimeters, they would reabsorb. Any other species of python is going to lay something with a 40 millimeter follicle.
Yeah.
Boelens are just so specialized to such a harsh environment where if the female does not feel completely, we're anthropomorphizing here. This is not really what happens, but we're going to anthropomorphize. Yeah. If the female's not completely comfortable with her ability to hatch babies and have those babies live, she's not going to waste that life force.
Yeah.
And nature has given them the ability to shut off that process at any point.
Yeah.
So
well put.
And I think some of the other scrub species can do that. I think Moluccans are able to reabsorb that fast too. But I think a big thing with Boelens is they are so built to absorb heat that giving them 8 to 12 hour basking spots every single day is allowing that female just to sit up there and coil and absorb all that heat and just bake those huge follicles and just let them die, whatever it is you want to call it. But I think changing it up so they can only have a few hours of basking every other day, maybe every third day, would even be more natural, because you look at their environment where it rains all the time. So you're not going to have access to basking. And if you're on a mountain, say this is a mountain face with it's a little hard, but the sun is coming up here. You can see it. Once the sun is on the other side of the mountain, you have a shadow cast.
Yeah.
So you don't really have the opportunity to have 12 hours of direct sunlight, even if there's no clouds, because the sun is going to go over the side of the mountain and cast a shadow.
Right. Yeah. They know it's daytime per se, but they're not getting actual light.
Sunlight.
Yeah. And even we see pictures where, I mean, how many pictures of that part of the island do we see when it's not overcast?
Oh, it's almost always raining. That's because, I mean, it's not just the Boelens guys that go up there. There's also like the Nepenthes pitcher plant guys that love to go up and explore because the same thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then you talk to the people that grow the Nepenthes maxima, which grow in the exact same place. I've asked Ari to send me pictures of the pitcher plants that live up there. And, Travis Wyman and I kind of asked around a couple groups like, hey, tell us exactly what these are. And they told us what they were and how to take care of them. And it's pretty consistently, hey, you give them 70 degrees during the day and 50 degrees at night. Every single night. There's no seasons.
Right. And no light?
No, they get light.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just, but you also have to remember the Boelens aren't out when it's like pouring down rain. It's 50 degrees. They're going into the little couscous burrows and they're hiding.
Sure.
So I think they have a very temperature stable environment, microclimate they can go into when it's bad outside. And then every other day, every third day, they go out for about 4 hours and just soak up as much heat as possible. Maybe go out and hunt a little bit. Who knows? Maybe on clear rainy nights clear rainless nights they go out and hunt. I don't really know, but I do think that they are built to absorb as much heat as possible when it's available. And it's very similar to humans where, we're kind of built to eat as much sugar and salt as possible because it's rarely available in the African savanna. So now that we've made our world where you can have salt and sugar whenever you want, we've got a bunch of people that are addicted to French fries and ice cream. Pretty good stuff.
Yeah. And here's another thing too is, just talking about the bolins and the couscous burrows. So we look at certain fossorial species that, they smell the rain, like coral snakes, for example. I've never found one in the wild, but from my friends that have, if it just rained and it's like 30, 40, maybe an hour after it rained, that's when they find corals for the most part, because the coral can smell the rain, it can feel the moisture in the air, and it knows, okay, the world is wet, I can come out, frogs are going to be moving, snakes are going to be moving, invertebrates are going to be moving. Now's my time to go do what I got to do before I got to go back underground. You look at a bolins that's living in a couscous burrow or a rotted out log, they have heat pits that are seeing this radiation. And it wouldn't shock me if they're using the heat pits not for temperature, but just for witnessing those radioactive waves and knowing, okay, the right light's coming through. I need to go outside and get some of that. But in captivity, the right light's always there. So why would I want to leave?
Yeah.
So I don't even know if it's necessarily a temperature thing of you said basking, and I knew what you mean, but I'm wondering if it's really not basking, if it's them saying, hey, this is the right kind of light. And I like you said with the sugar, right? Sugar and salt, maybe that radiation or that right type of light is their sugar and salt. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense. I still think temperature has to have something to do with it because they're from a place that it gets cold every night. They don't have warm summer nights like we do, or like a corn snake does, or like a diamond python does in New South Wales. It's like 60 to 40 degrees every night in that environment. It's such a strange place because it's equatorial mountains.
Yeah.
You don't really have people living on equatorial mountains that we can, well, I mean, people do, but there's not really like common places we can think of where, hey, it's warm every day that the sun's out. And from what I've been told, it's like the most intense UV in the world because you're up on high elevation on the equator. So it's like blazing hot and just burning right through your clothes when the sun's out. And then it's like almost frost every single night.
Wow.
It's like a desert.
And a little bit, but it's wet. So
yeah,
it's kind of this weird thing where like when the cloud cover comes over, it gets, kind of chilly. So they're probably going and hiding. But when they're coming out, they're just exposed to this crazy intense UV light. So I don't even know it's really that it gets super hot for their basking. It's just, there's got to be something to do with that light too. I feel like I started rambling there a little. I'm sorry, I got a little distracted by the chat. It's hard for me to read the chat and talk at the same time. I just need to take it away.
Well, it's funny because they're bouncing back and forth between crocodile monitors and juicy, crunchy fries. So, but yeah, I totally get what you're saying, man. I couldn't agree more. I think we're all on the same page, and I mean, we're talking about an animal that's very unobtainable for most people. And the people that are working with them are doing a damn good job. I just feel like guys like us, we want to give our 2 cents, and at the same time, we want to see them succeed. I want to see them succeed. So, for a multitude of reasons.
Yeah.
I'm much more interested.
I look at it from somebody
eggs from these Jansenii, damn it.
I love cold weather pythons. That's like my main interest is cold weather boids. So anything that's when you start describing, they drop down to like just above frost sometimes, and they're able to take down something the size of a small cat. I'm like, oh, that's awesome. Like that shouldn't exist. That's kind of why I like them. They're an animal that shouldn't be real.
Yeah, they go against everything that we've been taught and everything we've been shown and led to believe, so to speak,
Yeah. And I mean, diamonds are kind of the same way, but diamonds are at least in an area where, we can understand them because it is a seasonal,
Sure.
subtropical temperate environment where humans live pretty well too.
Right. Although it's not the norm, it's still understandable how they're doing a good job at surviving.
Yes. This is a place that, for lack of better words, doesn't have seasons. Like, it does a little bit. Like, I think there's a slight wet and dry season, but I don't think there's really pronounced seasons the way we would like to think of a place like that having them.
It's wetter and drier. It's not wet and dry.
Yeah. But even looking at the crocodile monitor stuff on here, that's where people had problems breeding crocodile monitors, and having some of these large monitor species is, if the female does not have a nest site that is perfect, more than likely she's either going to scatter them all over the place and eat them, or she's not going to lay them at all.
Yeah.
You talk to some of the old school monitor guys, and they're like, oh, well, if you give them what is it with the croc monitors? They do the trash can that's just full of mulch and let them dig down into it.
Yeah. Yeah, that's brilliant. And
they figured out, we'll get eggs all the time if we have this, but if we don't have that, they won't lay.
Yeah, exactly. And you walk in a room, and like you said, you find eggs scattered all over the place. And how long were they like that, and how damaged are they from that? And Henry puts up a good point. He says Himalayan king cobras have been known to come out and bask in the 30s in the snow, and I totally believe that. But that also goes back to, mom may be basking in the snow, but those eggs are in that perfect watertight sealed nest at the perfect temperature, the perfect humidity, all that. So, and then it also, that goes to like my wrinkles. Like, I have pictures from, Tyler Ping is a photographer in South Africa. I have pictures of the cobra basking on snow, just like a garter snake would. And you look at garter snakes and you look at wrinkles, and they're both keeled and they're both live bearing. So it makes you think. And now you look at something like the Bolins, and it's like, well, it's not keeled, it's not live bearing. So now it's really got to figure out how to get these things going. Oh man, it's an amazing topic. I really hope that in our lifetime we get to see it blossom.
Yeah, I don't know. That's something I've thought about for a while. Before they became 10 grand, that was my plan for a species I was going to work with. When they were like 3,500, I was like, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to buy one a year for 5 years using Brettles Python money. And all of a sudden, certain companies started saying that they were captive born when they weren't captive born, and jumped them up to $11,000 a piece.
Yeah.
So it's like, I guess I'm not going to do this.
Yeah, for now. Things change, trends change, people's opinions change, people's passions change. So who knows?
Riverbank Zoo had a really cool setup with like a trio in it.
Yeah.
I think Nashville Zoo has them set up in the men's restroom.
Really?
Right above the urinals. Yeah.
That's got to be weird if you're the guy having to do maintenance and you're in there and you're like looking down. There's a bunch of dudes taking a whiz.
Who knows? Maybe they liked it.
Yeah, maybe it's it. Maybe the smell of ammonia is what really triggers them. We're completely wrong about this. It's not just the smell of ammonia.
Smells like piss.
Yeah.
It makes some eggs.
Keith and Ari are just peeing into their enclosures once a week.
Minimal human interaction.
Yeah, right.
But yeah, no, I do wonder that. Like, maybe it really is just the human element that's stopping this whole thing. Like, scrub pythons. Maybe scrub pythons breed just fine in the wild. They breed just fine in the exact same habitats that carpet pythons do. Well, maybe not the exact same, but similar enough that it shouldn't be as much of an issue as it is.
Right.
And I just wonder if it really is just the human element.
Like, aren't Halmaheras the reason Tracy A are so tough to produce is because they just stress so easily?
That's probably part. I mean, honestly, man, everything on that island's hard to breed. The blue-tongue skinks, no one has ever bred Halmahera blue-tongue skinks. The geckos, they're hard to breed. I don't know if they have a tree monitor, but I'm going to assume the tree monitors there are hard to breed. It's just something about that weird, like, volcanic, broken continent island that just makes things not want to breed in captivity.
Yeah. Who knows, man? And I hate to say it, but it may even be permanent PTSD. You know what I mean? Because so many of these animals were field collected, whether they were field collected as babies or field collected as adults. Maybe some species or some individual animals, again, anthropomorphizing, they get that PTSD and they're so shook up. They're just like, screw it. I'll just sit here and eat on occasion. You know, and that's it.
I guess I'll survive. I won't thrive, but I'll live.
Yeah.
I don't know. I mean, that's kind of the issue they have with the Draco lizards. Like Draco lizards, if you can get healthy ones, they breed just like every other anole-esque lizard. The problem is their kidneys are all shot by the time they actually get here, so they all die.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's what Frank Payne has said. With those in particular, he's like, hydration when they first come in, that is the top priority, is keep them hydrated because they go downhill so quick. If they don't start out on the right foot there, then yeah, he's like, they're tough.
Yeah, that makes sense. It does.
And I mean, I'm sure that they're no different than any other like lizard with that body type. And I assume in nature they're basically just like the anoles in Florida. Like they kind of just scrap around and fight, and they pick out their own like little couple territories on the trees, and they lay a couple eggs every year. As long as you keep them fed and feed them, or keep them fed and hydrated, they're probably fine. It's just they're half dead by the time they get in, and they don't bounce back because they're fragile little lizards.
Yeah, that's another good example. Canexis Tortoises, Tyler's told us, and talking to him, those take a while to really come around to captivity because a lot of them are imported. And he said, some of them do come out of it, but he said I think he told me that he still had some that just they never fully get on board with the whole captive setting.
Yeah, he actually gave kudos to my mom because my mom's got specs that I got her, and after about 2.5, maybe 3 years, they really became like normal tortoises, and now she picks them up and they walk around the kitchen and life is cool. But yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, and dehydration too. I mean, that just exacerbates so many other problems. That's like with boiga. You get imported boiga, like keep them hydrated. Don't try to feed them like right off the bat, but just make sure they're getting plenty of water, and then slowly work towards food, and then slowly work towards getting rid of parasites. Is insane with Gonyosoma. Talking to Nipper's like, the moment you get these, if you get them in their fresh imports and you start pumping Panicure into them, you're gonna kill them. Like, it just doesn't. Like, let them live with the parasites for a couple weeks. Let them chill out. Let them get adjusted. Then do what you need to do. But if you bring them in same week, you're throwing in, fenbendazole, you're throwing in, Flagyl, whatever. Like, and they're not hydrated, you're just obliterating, their kidneys or their livers. It's
killing their liver and kidneys.
Yeah.
Yep. And Scott put up a good thing too. He says he knows people that put a worn T-shirt. The keeper wears a T-shirt, an old ratty T-shirt, whatever, and then puts it in with the animal, so the animal will slowly acclimate to the keeper's smell. And I know that from in pet shops, people do that with hedgehogs, because hedgehogs, when you first get them, they're mean. Yeah. They don't want to play. So you'd have your son or daughter wear a T-shirt for a day when they're out playing, sweating on it, whatever, and then you cut it into pieces and throw a piece in there. Let it get gross, whatever, throw it away, add another piece to the shirt, and that helps acclimate. I totally believe that. And it makes sense that we do that with animals, with snakes too. That's another thing that we could put on the bowling list. If you're not going to attempt to eliminate the human element, why not try and incorporate it in a better way. Who knows?
Hey, and who knows? Maybe ripped up shards of T-shirt or a fantastic nesting medium.
Yeah, who knows, man? Who knows? Oof.
Yeah,
I
or
forgot
you
about
could
the
end up with a thing
Canexis.
if
That
they
was
try
good.
to eat it, like chondros do to
Puppy
puppy pads
pads.
sometimes.
Yeah. Oh man.
They get excited. They get a little too excited.
A little too excited.
And they happen. That's why I don't really bother feeding live, because it's almost a guarantee they're going to wrap up that paper towel in some capacity.
Yeah.
Like 8 times out of 10, they ain't getting just the mouse. They're just getting some extras with it. And then they hold on
So
to
I
it
did
so
that
damn
with,
tight, you can't get it out, and then they end up eating some.
Yeah.
From personal experience, that happens.
So I made the mistake with blue tongues one time of usually what I do is I'll use a piece of like paper plate to feed them with, but I ran out and I had some coffee filters. So it's like, whatever, coffee filters are fine. I had a male eat a coffee filter. He pooped it out just fine.
The whole filter?
Yeah, he ate the entire filter.
Wow.
I mean, it's like that big or so. Came out, no issues. I actually didn't know he ate it. I was just, I don't know, I guess when I opened up his like enclosure thing to look, I was like, yeah, well, I must have cleaned it and forgot.
Yeah. Oof.
But no, he ate the entire like thin coffee filter. went through.
And see, I do the paper
Now
plate
we don't
thing.
use coffee filters for feeding.
Yeah, I tried to do the paper plate thing with Dramarcon, and it was at first I was like, "This is brilliant! I'll put the food on the plate. It'll go over. It'll eat the food off the plate. You know, it's not going to fight it because it knows this is dead." Yeah, that didn't work. It still tried to kill all the food, and they just get mouthfuls of dirt. So I'm like, you know what? You want to get a mouthful of dirt? Go for it. Enjoy it. They poop the dirt out. Whatever.
Cleanse.
Yeah. Right. Yeah.
I had to pull a little bit of cypress mulch out of a ball python's mouth about 7 days ago.
I believe it. I believe it.
Yeah, it was one male. He has not eaten for me the entire time I've got him. I finally just threw in an adult mouse just to see, like, oh, maybe you're a mouser. I don't know. You didn't eat like the little half-grown mice I threw in there, but maybe you want an adult. Sure enough, as soon as I threw it in, thunk, he grabbed it and also grabbed a big old piece of cypress mulch with it. So I had to like wait for him to swallow it and then like really reach down and try to like wrestle it out of him.
Yeah.
So the joys
Snakes
of
will do
keeping not so smart animals.
Yeah, right. Oh man. Yeah, but I think too, like, there's obviously not quote unquote mulch in the wild, but I imagine there would be a circumstance where a ball python may have a piece of, substrate, for lack of a better word, a larger piece, whether it be a branch or a big leaf or something,
leaf or something like that. They'd have to.
And whether they ate it or not, I've seen so many snakes too where they work it out. You know what I mean? And providing it's a big enough piece or a textured piece. I mean, sphagnum is different. Sphagnum has killed snakes for me, unfortunately. But a big stick coming out their mouth like a piece of wood. I've seen it where they'll move their jaw and move their tongue and move their glottis, and they'll work that, and they'll get the prey item down, and then that piece will just fall off. But in captivity, who wants to risk it? So we pull it out, right?
Yeah, I mean, I had that little chondro a couple years ago. I still have that animal, actually. Or no, I don't. Alan Stevens has it. It ate a little piece of. I say a little piece is about the size of a quarter, and you're talking about a juvenile chondro.
Yeah, it's bigger than his head.
Ate a piece of that paper towel because it had grabbed the mouse, wrapped up the towel. So I tried to pull the towel out, and of course it's holding onto that thing so hard that it just ripped.
Right.
And so I just left it be because I was like, it'll get the mouse down, the paper towel will fall off, whatever. Of course, I come in, both the paper towel piece and that pinky are gone, and I'm like, cool, this thing's done for. And I was like, it's done. I left it for a few days. It yacked it back up. I gave it like 2 weeks off of food, made sure it stayed hydrated. No issues. So
yeah,
I figured it was just, I was like, it sat in the gut for easily a week. Like the lump was there constantly, and I'm like, surely it's gonna it can't process that, so it's got to give it back at some point.
Yeah,
and it did. And I took a picture of it. It's, so I don't. It's
it happens.
That's why I'm weird about feeding live on any substrate. Mostly because I don't feel like picking it out of the snake's mouth as it's trying to eat, especially chondros, their freaking teeth.
Oh yeah, yeah. I think my worst thing is when I had my last spitalaps passed away unknowingly, no idea why, and I got a hair up my ass, so I necropsied it, and it had a giant mass of rotten sphagnum in its gut. And I guess every single time it ate, it would get a few little pieces of spag, and it would just stay in this one spot in its gut and stay in the spot and stay in the spot and stay in the spot. And the digestive stuff would go past the moss, and eventually the moss just got so big that it probably got impaction and probably went sepsis or whatever, and that's why it died. So now I'm very, very particular about, with snakes, specifically snakes and frogs too, where I put the moss. I feel like the geckos and lizards are pretty good about getting just the bug. You know what I mean? I mean, obviously some sand gets in there from time to time, no big deal, but like, I don't think I've seen one of my lizards eat a whole piece of sphagnum moss. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And I do remember this is why I'd never use aspen, is I have this picture, I think it's from a veterinary textbook or something like that. I don't know why I was looking at it, but they did a necropsy on a bobcat that had died, and they found out its stomach was just full of wood chips, or its lower intestine was full of wood chips.
Really?
And that's what killed it, was every time it ate, it would eat a little bit of wood chip.
Interesting.
And couldn't pass it. So when they cut it open, and it was like literally just full, it was like a bag of,
wow.
And I'm sure it was pine shavings. So it's just like a bag of pine shavings inside of it.
Meanwhile, they cut open sharks, and they've got license plates.
I've always been afraid of using aspen chips because of that picture.
Yeah, but what was the bobcat eating that was in the aspen?
Well, it was a zoo bobcat, so I'm sure that they were just feeding, bits of kibble or Missouri. I don't know what they feed bobcats and zoos, but it was a zoo bobcat that was kept on wood chips. And I'm sure it was not very healthy to begin with. It may have even been like a wildlife rehab center kind of deal. But yeah, just remembering that picture and just how like utterly full of wood chips this thing was is why I refuse to use aspen. Partially too because, I unthaw frozen thawed in water. So when I give my snakes their food, it's wet. So if it fell on top of aspen, aspen's going to stick to it no matter what.
Oh, yeah.
And I'm sure they can pass a little bit. It's just that fear of, okay, what if a little bit gets stuck on, and then the next go around, a little bit more gets stuck on, kind of like you're saying with the sphagnum moss.
Yeah, exactly.
I want a bobcat so I can be like Joe Exotic.
You're from the same place
as what's that guy's name?
Oh, Jeff Lowe. Yeah,
the dude from what's his name?
Jeff Lowe.
Yeah, that did crack me up when I watched that. They showed the Beaufort, South Carolina movie theater.
Our county's pride.
Hey, it was a nice movie theater. I liked it when I went. And
they
didn't
got really
see you.
Dogs.
But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why I'm afraid of aspen and not afraid of cypress mulch. Because I know I could have the exact same problems with it. I think it's just because the species that I keep on cypress mulch, I usually try to either feed live or, they're blue tongues and they're eating dog food or whatever I decide to chop up for them.
I don't know. I think it's also subconscious too. Excuse me while I clear my throat. I think it's subconscious too, where at least with me, I feel like cypress is more natural looking. So I don't feel as afraid with it as I do with like, aspen or carefresh. Because I feel like neither one of those in their state, obviously carefresh doesn't grow in the wild, but you know what I mean? Like, you don't just go out in the woods and find a big field of aspen shavings. You know what I mean? Well, as I feel like cypress mulch, you would find a rotten cypress knot or stump decomposing with grubs and beetles, and the fluff of it, I feel like in my mind is more natural. And it could be totally in my freaking head. You know what I mean?
No, I think it's in my head too. I think that's literally what it is that those little like yellow tan dried out chunks of wood are so unnatural that I just associate them with that bobcat that died of impaction.
Yeah. 100%. 100%. Well, gentlemen, we're at 2 hours. Is there anything else you guys want to touch base on?
What do you got lined up for breeding, Casey, this year?
If I wanted to, and I don't know if I want to, I could potentially do 13 clutches of Brettles pythons.
Wow.
Jesus.
Yeah, which I don't think I'm going to do that. That sounds like a lot. I could do 6 pairings of blue tongue skinks if I can finally figure these guys out. I've warmed up the Sonoran gophers today, so I would like to get a clutch of Sonoran gopher snakes. What else have I got? I've got the Sanzinia together. I don't really think I've seen any locks this year, but
I keep forgetting you have those.
Yeah, man, I always forget you have them.
Yeah, they locked up a lot more last year than they had this year, but I'm still not completely counting it out.
I remember last year you were sending us pictures constantly of them locked up.
Yeah, they locked up all the time last year. I don't know what's different this year. But I think I'm going to upgrade their enclosure to more along the lines of what I've got the Brettles in right now, later on this year. I'm hoping maybe a little bit more of a layered enclosure is going to be good for them. Oh, and I've got 3 or 4 clutches of ball pythons. So I'm a sellout ball python breeder now too.
Nice.
That's cool, I'm actually super excited about that. I do feel like people that really want to focus on like more obscure species do need to have a handful of really easy species to breed, so you're not like constantly pulling your hair out thinking that you're a bad snake breeder.
Yeah.
It's kind of nice to just open up the ball python tubs and yeah, it's kind of nice to open up the ball python tubs and see locks all the time.
Things that don't require a whole lot of thought or stress.
I get it.
Yeah, exactly. That's fun. I can like look at my Sanzinia and like pull my hair out and do the same thing with the blue tongues, and then like look at the ball pythons and be like, oh yeah, no, you guys are doing exactly what I want you to. That's awesome. Thanks for doing exactly the right thing.
Yeah.
And I don't have to baby you to get you to do it.
Right. Oh man, I just need my stuff to get older. Like I feel like I have so much 2 and 3-year-old stuff that's just on the cusp of being ready. You know what I mean? Another year. Scott says 13 clutches of fuck that.
This was actually the first year ever where I had 100% success rate getting them to eat the first time they were ever offered food. I did not have a single.
There's worse species to get 13 clutches from, and 13 clutches worth of babies out of to have to deal with.
Yeah, but usually like I'll get a clutch of. I've never gotten a clutch of like 35 like some guys seem to do. I hear stories of, oh, my Brettles laid 45 eggs, and I've usually get like 18 to 22, something like that. And usually it works out where I can get like 17 out of 19 or 17 out of 20 to eat. And there's like, one more, you kind of got to like tease it a little bit and it'll go. And then there's like 2 holdouts. This year I didn't have that. But Jeremy Turgan, who Brassman Reptiles, I met him at he's working part-time at a local reptile shop now, and he's like, man, I've got these 8 brittles and they're just not eating for me. And I was like, give them to me for a little while, I'll get them eating and then I'll give them back to you. So I haven't tried to feed them yet, but I feel like that's going to be like my punishment for having a really good feeding year with my stuff.
Yeah.
Is going to be trying to get these 8 little stubborn ones to go. I needed to punish myself a little bit for having too good of a year, you know?
Sure.
We call it the fucking.
Oh man, I'm stoked because my little baby telescopus are just eating whatever I put in there now.
Hell yeah!
I don't scent it. I don't tease it. I mean, I'm still feeding live just because they're on it. They're still babies. Why not?
Right.
But dude, you hear, like, this is gonna sound morbid, but you hear the squeak of the pinky being consumed, but it's so quick now where I'll open the tub and I have all the little toilet paper rolls flattened to make, like, nooks and crannies, and you won't see a snake at all. And I have a deli cup lid in there so that the pinky doesn't get all covered in sand, and I'll put the pinky on there and I'll close the tub and I'll turn around and you'll hear the tweet, 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 and I'll turn back and you'll see this snake carrying away the pinky. It's the coolest thing, man. It's morbid, but I love watching it. Well, thank you, Scott. I'm glad you got to hear it, man.
It was a good show. I enjoyed
so
that.
Did I tell you guys what I did differently with feeding?
What was that, Casey?
No, so did I tell you guys what I did differently with the feeding? And this is really stupid.
What's that?
I didn't use feeding tongs. I just used my hand.
Really?
I don't know why. Yeah, that was the biggest thing I did differently this year. Was I don't know. Because I'm actually using tongs now. I'm not using pliers like you used to make fun of me for.
Yeah,
this time I didn't have them nearby. I left them upstairs. Yeah. So I had a big bowl of, like, piping hot water that I had the frozen thawed fuzzies in, and I just pulled them out, and I just went 1, 2, 3, just to, like, see what happened, and every single one of them just first meal they ever took.
That's great.
Like, I have never had snakes go on frozen thawed like that. So I'm sure it's one of those things where, like, it had nothing to do with the fact I didn't use tongs, but no, I'm never going to use tongs again for baby snakes. Well, baby carpet pythons, let's not get too crazy here with all snakes, but
yeah.
I feel like there may be something to that of snakes are afraid of tongs. I definitely think colubrids are afraid of tongs.
Yeah, I mean, dude, Matt Most talked about it before where, he was, getting hemostats and feeding tongs and tweezers that were, black coated or brown coated to eliminate the glare or the shininess of it. Who knows? There could be something to it. I'm actually shocked because I take pride that I never get bit by anything. Like, I'm that guy. And I got bit by the baby Nova Guinea 3 times before I realized what was happening. And I opened the tub and I had the frozen thawed, hopper in my hand, and I was kind of like shaking the water off. And I go to place it, like, on top of his hide box because he'll just eat it, And when I get to, like, here, I just feel whack, whack, whack real quick. And I was like, what just happened? This is like the nicest snake in the world, but apparently now I need to use tweezers. So Ryan Cox says, don't be raw dog and baby Aatrox like that.
Don't want another Jake on our hands.
Oh, Jesus.
Hey, y'all know. Maybe that's the trick. Maybe that's the trick to every snake. You just gotta just use your fingers.
Oh,
baby mambas? Yeah, why not? You're not gonna get bit.
Yeah, right. I was using my fingers and it got me the bicep.
How did this happen?
Right.
Yeah. See, like, those guys on YouTube, they think they're all that tough because they're able to just pick stuff up, free handling it. No, you gotta free feed it. That's the new YouTube trend. You heard it here.
That is gonna get snipped out of this podcast. Jesus,
we've already come this far. Why not?
Oh, jeez. Well, on that note,
supernatural
gentlemen.
collection.
Oh God. Justin, anything else you'd like to add, sir?
Nope.
Casey?
THP is back Thursday. We're going to have Frank Payne and Tim Marks. They're going to talk about the new leap habitats.
Cool.
They just put out sort of a premiere video today on their YouTube channel that talks about the product stuff. I'm about halfway through it before we started. So
nice. I've seen the Instagram campaign. It looks good.
Yeah. So it's going to be cool to talk to them about those and see what they're all about. And I've been wanting to have Frank on for a while, so I'm sure we'll have him on for this, and then at some point we'll have him on another time to get more. I want to talk about those carpet chameleons in particular as far as what he's doing with those. So have to make that happen.
Yeah, definitely ask him if he got any of the recent imports. Because there's been a bunch brought in recently, and man, some of the ones I saw, they were just stellar, crazy purples and greens.
Yeah.
And, awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah,
you guys know the pygmy chameleons are going to start coming in again.
I don't know if they're going to. I think they're still, protected, for lack of a better word. And I know like Underground got a shipment from Madagascar, and they got one Fimbriatus, and it was not good looking. It was very, very dehydrated, and sadly to say, it did pass away like a day after they got it. So
sucks.
Yeah, sucks. But everyone was enamored with it because it's been so many years since we've got fresh Fimbriatus and Europlatus Fimbriatus. And it was bad because some of the guys that work there, they'd never seen one in person. And the first time they see it is like this emaciated, horrible animal. I felt so bad for him. But there's a reason why they only let so many out,
Yeah.
So.
Just sucks that they get that far, and they make it all the way to the States and they get set up, and then it's like, yeah, I'm done.
Yeah.
So,
yeah. I remember when the pygmies were like junk animals that came in.
Yeah. Oh yeah. They were cheap.
Yeah, they were like
readily
$15
available.
a piece. And right now, like no one has them.
Yeah. I Underground got them in one time, and they got a bunch of gravid females, and they all dropped. And I said, I'm going to get a baby and I'm going to feed it fruit flies.
Yeah.
And
on that note, I will.
You there?
Casey.
Yeah.
Did you have a stroke? What are you...
Hey, you guys good? You all froze for a second. We good now?
No. You froze. He's moving, but I don't think he can hear us.
You guys good?
We're good.
No. You all froze for a second. I was like trying to talk to you.
Oh.
And now you're frozen again.
Anyway, we're good. We're good. So, Casey, anything you want to say signing off?
Yeah, that was awkward.
Any comments on the Invisible Arc?
Jesus. Oh, there he goes. Poor guy. Well, for those of you who don't know, Nipper and I put out a brand new podcast called Venom Exchange Radio. It will be a podcast solely for people who are venomous enthusiasts. We're going to try and cover all aspects of venomous, from field work and captive husbandry, photography and breeding and academic stuff, and you name it, we're going to cover it, all venom related. Episode 1 is out on Spotify right now. It should be on Google and Apple soon as they allow it to happen. We also have an Instagram page that we made. It's Venom Exchange Radio on Instagram, so definitely check it out. And it is not on the THP or the NPR feed. It's on its own thing, so you have to search for it by Venom Exchange Radio. So hopefully everyone gets a chance to listen to that and let me know what you think. That's all I got, man.
When's the second episode coming out?
I think we're gonna do it monthly for now. If I can get more. The problem is, Nipper's 5 hours ahead of me.
Yeah, time schedules are.
Yeah, and that's what's rough. And he's got some stuff that he's gonna be doing with Burke and the NPR boys too. I'm gonna chime in with him on a Gecko thing too. So if his work schedule lightens up a little bit, we'll probably get some more content out. We have a long list of guests that are already like, yeah, we'll do it. So if I can get more episodes recorded to like play catch up, then maybe we'll do it, 2 a month, like every other week. But as of right now, it's just gonna be once a month. So
word.
Yeah, man. And I don't want to give too many teasers away, but the next episode is our first guest, and it involves animals that go bzzz. So definitely,
Bees.
Yes, wasps and
Wasps.
hornets. Yes. It definitely does not. It's snakes. So Venom Exchange Radio, go check it out, find it, and hopefully it'll be on Google and Apple soon enough.
Yeah. Well, this was a good one. I enjoyed it.
Very much so.
So glad to be back. This last like 2 or 3 weeks, it's been rough. I've been itching to get back to recording, and that's why that break is good though, because it is. I'm just so amped and ready to be back at it. So
yeah, man, reminds you what you're missing.
Yeah.
Puget
Sound Pythons. They're the ones who help bring this show to you every week. Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, check them out. They just put out a video for their 2021 year in review, which was really good. Yeah, good people. Check them out. Once again, follow us anywhere podcasts can be found. Subscribe here on YouTube. Like all that good stuff. Patreon, like I said, we have Patreon, $1 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, whatever. We have a couple different tiers to choose from if you feel like supporting the show. Your listenership is more than enough, if you ask me.
100%. I agree.
Yeah.
We talked about how we're probably going to try and do a Patreon only raffle where nobody pays extra money for tickets. Just you being in the Patreon gives you a raffle ticket. So as of right now, we're going to iron those details out and hopefully go from there.
Yeah. And I was talking to Billy about shirts for the higher tier Patreons too. So
cool.
Maybe seeing if we can get some ordered and get those folks hooked up. So,
yeah, be cool.
4 and 5 tier patrons. So
love it.
Yep. Everyone have a good evening, good morning, good day, whenever you may be listening to this after the live stream. And thank you. THP is coming back Thursday night. We're going to start posting those. So we're going to have the video recorded. We're going to upload the video to YouTube as well. So you can listen to the audio version. The video version, if you like watching the streams instead, will be posted later on as well. So, or, the next day, whatever. So also planning to put out some more video stuff, not like this, but like what I put out yesterday. Talking about, a brief video on Biot Chondros. Had some requests for some Baird's videos and some corn stuff and other goodies like that. And I know Jake has some stuff he wants to start doing as far as like herping and stuff. So hopefully the plan is right now is to start putting more content out on the YouTube channel here. And now that I have decent internet, I actually uploaded that video yesterday in like 5 minutes, which is unbelievable because before it would have taken like 3 hours to upload a 5-minute video. So it's insane how much better this internet is. So that's
glad to hear it.
That was a big part and why I really didn't do many videos before, is because uploading either at home or at work took forever for a video to get uploaded. So
I can imagine.
Yeah. Now that that's not an issue, I'm going to try and put out more. So a lot of stuff.
Good stuff.
Everyone have a good day, good evening, all that stuff.
And if you're listening on your way to work, good morning.
See you later.
Bye.